Just before I get going with this, I wanted to say that I've transcribed the whole of Chill for E flat and B flat instruments. So if you want a copy of that, get over to my website, chrisjolly.com, sign up to the mailing list, and immediately I'll send you a transcription of all of the tune and all of the solos as Joshua Redman plays it. Once I'd learnt that, I wanted to pull it apart even more. Not just note-wise. Yes, we're going to have a look very briefly at why certain notes have been put in there and why the phrase lines up as it does. But I also want to look at the way that it's executed and the way that I've tried to pull that apart and look in even more detail in how we can make a line like that, quite a plain line to look at, how we can make it sound more jazzy, the way that Joshua Redman did. And that's what I really want to learn out of that. I want to learn how to execute lines like that and make them sound as jazzy as Joshua does. So first of all, let's have a look at that line. Now, it's very simple in its structure. This is a section of the solo that's moved into concert B flat, and the rhythm section is just vamping on a concert B flat. So on tenor, I'm just in C, just a C7 chord underneath, and this is the line that's being played over the top. The first thing that really struck me was the number of notes that are just in the key of C7. And wherever we have any adjustments to that scale, so you can see the first instance is between the B natural and B flat, that's just chromaticism. It's just a chromatic passing note. That's all it is a little bit of decoration to make that line a little bit smoother. The next instance is the E flat to the E natural. Now we've got something else going on here. I've got a feeling this is an enclosure around the E natural. So the previous two notes are an F, which is just above an E natural, an E flat just below the E natural, and then resolving onto the E natural. Again, it's just some sort of chromaticism, some chromatic decoration to make that line a little bit smoother. And the final example of some chromaticism is the C natural, C sharp, D towards the end of the line. Again, just some chromaticism to smooth out that line. The thing I want to listen out for now is the articulation that is being used. This is a semiquaver run. We're not going to be adding any sort of swing to this. It's quite a medium speed to this piece, so we're not going to be adding any swing to semiquavers. We can't do it. We'll add some swing to quaver movements, but we're not going to add any swing to semiquaver movements. It's just going to sound too clunky, especially at the speed that these semiquavers are going to have to be played. So we implement something else, and that is offbeat tonguing. And I've listened to this. I've listened to Joshua play this, and I've listened to him slow it. I've slowed it right down so I can listen to exactly how he's executing each one of these notes. And there is a lot of offbeat tonguing going on in there. So I've just notated the music as I've just mentioned as in offbeat tonguing. What I mean by that offbeat tonguing is tonguing every other note. You tongue the first two notes and then slur every other note. So the phrase ends up sounding like this. And then there's a slight emphasis on those offbeats that just pops out, that is going to pop out because you're using your tongue on them. You're articulating those notes, so they're going to sound a little bit clearer than the ones that you're slurring onto. And then it's just a case of speeding that up but keeping it nice and smooth. So there's a lot of legato tonguing going on there, very smooth tonguing, but it's the tonguing on the offbeats that makes it sound jazzy. Another thing that he does as well is he ghosts two notes in this phrase that just, for me, magnifies the way that he makes this sound really jazzy. I've cross-headed those couple of notes in the phrase. It's on the run-up. It's the F just before the A and the E flat just before the E. Kind of swallows those notes. So it goes... And all I'm doing there is emphasizing certain parts of the beat with the breath control, with the push of air, and then I like to call it swallowing the notes. We're not actually breathing in, we're not taking any notes in. We're just stopping that pressure for a split second. For those notes aren't really being pushed out as much. It's almost a little bit like turning the tap on and off of this pressure, and that drop in pressure suddenly kind of sinks that note in volume and sinks that note so it doesn't really come out as strong. That's kind of what ghost notes are. That on top of this offbeat tonguing through this really well constructed line, for me is what makes it a line that I just listened to and thought, I need to learn what's going on there because that sounds pretty good. So what am I going to do with this next? Well, it's important that I remember what I've just got out of that one phrase. I've transcribed the whole solo, but that one phrase, what I've got out of that, I need to try and copy that into other playing of mine. So I need to start trying to replicate that sound because I obviously enjoyed listening to that sound. Well, if I enjoyed listening to it, other people are going to enjoy listening to it. That's what I want to try and sound like. So I'm going to use those things that I've just picked up in that phrase, partly through the line construction, yes, but it's more about the execution for me, the way that that line was played, the offbeat tonguing. That's something I need to work on. That's something I need to practice, implementing in other lines that I come up with. And the little ghost notes that are just thrown in there as well, the slight emphasis on different parts of the phrase, which are going to make it sound even more jazzy. That's what I've learned from transcribing this solo, listening to this solo and trying to copy that. That's what I'm going to take forward in my playing. I have transcribed the whole solo to this tune, so if you do want this, all you've got to do, go along to my website, chrisjolly.com, sign up for the mailing list, and I will send you a free copy of this transcription. And that way you can play along with what Joshua is doing. You can listen to the way that he's playing those phrases. Like I said, it's not always about the line construction. It's not always about the notes that are being used. For me, it's about how he plays them. It's about how he plays certain bends on certain notes, certain falls on certain notes. There were certain notes that I couldn't hear whether it was one note or the other because he was doing so much with it. Lots and lots of stuff that goes on in that solo that's not necessarily to do with which notes he's playing, but the way that he's playing it. So if you want to have a go at playing along with this, get onto my website, get on the mailing list, and I will send you immediately, I'll send you a transcription of the solo. In fact, all of the music to Chill, the Joshua Redman tune.